Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Buyer Be Aware, some of the CX trends impacting B2B service firms in 2025 and beyond. My name is Gregg. I am the founder of ClearlyRated and currently hold the role of CX strategist. So I get to spend a lot of my time doing exactly what we're doing here, which is really sort of riffing on what we're seeing as some of the key trends impacting professional service firms now and in the next couple of years. I see some familiar names in the attendee list. We'll give people just a minute here to get settled into their seat, but great to see you all. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A tab or into the chat. I'm happy to engage in both of those. I do have both of those open as well. And then finally, from the housekeeping standpoint, this is going to be recorded. It is being recorded, and I'll make the slides as well as the recording available to you all. I realized in talking to my colleague Aaron that we actually had not really set a time limit on this. We're holding the full hour. My goal is to do this in about 45 minutes because I certainly don't want to listen to myself for a full 60 minutes in any given spot. I suspect that you don't as well. So I'll give you about 15 minutes back on this, and we will have some time at the end for formal questions as well. So let's jump right into it and get going. For those that don't know us or don't know us well, we power client experience for 400 plus professional service firms globally. 91% rate us a 9 or a 10, 94% say that we help them differentiate in the marketplace, and 96% report that they get a positive ROI working with us. And so what we're really focused on is not just providing the software that helps you manage and improve the client experience. And I think that improve piece is really critical. We really pride ourselves on that aspect of it, but we also put CX expertise next to you. And so, unlike a lot of service platforms where their goal is just to get you live in the software and then good luck, you can do whatever you want. Our goal is to really partner with you and help you improve the service experience that you're delivering to clients. So we're going to be hitting really three key areas today. We're going to be talking about the client journey. We've got some really cool new data from 500 plus buyers of professional services, and we're going to share some of that new data with you. And some of the things that, if you kind of just use a really kind of back of the envelope client journey from awareness to consideration to selection to onboarding to existing service to hopefully referral and advocate and expansion opportunities. We'll kind of take through a few key things and some of the areas on that journey, and then we'll hit some of the trends that we think are impacting CX in 2025 and beyond. I could have really done just all on that, to be honest, but I did want to kind of lay out some of the mistakes as I'm working closer and closer with some of the top professional service firms around the world. I'm starting to see some of the big common mistakes that we're trying to correct within their CX program. So I wanted to kind of shine the light on a few of those items as well. And hopefully there'll be some new information. For those of you who've been on my webinars in the past, I think there'll be a few things that you'll probably recognize, but there should be quite a bit that's actually new here as well. One of the things that's interesting to me is, if you look at the last handful of years, what we have seen is that client experience has gotten a lot more mature. And what I mean by that is that when we first started doing this for professional service firms, close to 15 years ago, what I would say is that the idea is that you would just do a survey once a year, and that survey usually got housed somewhere in a marketing department, and it kind of got viewed as that, hey, we need to kind of check the box, we need to get feedback, we need to formalize this, we need to show the leadership team how we're doing and what we're doing well on. And as we've evolved, so have you. And what we're seeing right now is significant uptick in people with CX-centric jobs, whether it's a director of client experience, whether it is a VP of client experience, or some other title that's in that kind of genre. We're seeing that push a lot more. And what we're seeing, I think, also in that maturity is people understanding that, we've always said in professional services that the client service that we provide is our key differentiator. But now what we're realizing is that we need to actually take steps further to deliver on that differentiation, and to drive home that differentiation. And one of the things that I think is helpful as you look at this, and we did this in accounting and staffing, where we have the most clients, and we ran this where we looked at a bunch of firms that we knew were not really focused on the client experience, and they grew about 10% a year. The CX focused firms grew about 12% a year, which, when you look at that at the end of a 5-year period is, a change in the growth trajectory of about 19%. For a $100 million CX firm, that's about $20 million in additional revenue over those 4 years. So really understanding that this is can be centered part of your growth strategy is a critical piece of this. So let's kind of talk about the client journey, and there's some really cool things in here. Some of the things I've shared before, like this first slide, you've seen this before, but I think it bears repeating, a version of this, right? This is the B2B buyer journey, according to Gartner. And I put in a couple things here, right? And oftentimes what we think about is that, oh, okay, they're ready to engage with our firm early in that process. But what we know pretty definitively now, research from Gartner, research from Forrester have both kind of landed on this idea that B2B buyers are about 80% towards making their decision before they ever engage with our firm. And the other thing that I want you to take away from this visual is just the complexity in it. And buyers actually feel this complexity. And in fact, sometime I want to dive deep and almost do just an entire session just on how do we reduce complexity, how do we reduce stress? It's actually a very stressful thing for buyers. How do we reduce that in our buying process as a professional service firm, to be able to do that? But for now, what I really want you to understand is that it is getting more complex. People are thinking about more potential ways that they can solve the same problems. And because of that, we really have to stand out in that noise, and we really have to get them to a final decision. Additionally, when we look at this, the number of stakeholders involved in the decision has continuously grown. And this is part of what that complexity, if you look at the time to make a decision, most of the research I've seen is also showing that that has increased as well. And so what we know is that as the buyer group gets bigger, there are more personas involved, right? There are more reasons to say no to a particular firm, to your firm. And we have to actually appeal differently to different buyers, different influencers in that set. The most recent example is between 12 and 17, buyers, researchers, and influencers. So again, somebody might not be a buyer on this, but if they're the ones that are pulling together the initial firms to be considered, if you're not standing out to them, you might not ever actually make it in front of the buyer. And I'll show you in a minute some really cool research that shows how important that piece of it is. But this is also important because one of the things I'm going to hit on that you've heard me say before is we have to de-risk this decision. And part of the reason why we have to de-risk this decision is that as the buyer group size grows, risk aversion also grows. This is really fascinating research from Corporate Executive Board that basically found that the bigger the group size, the more risk averse they become. And the reason for that is that two things. It's harder to get to consensus around a perceived risky decision. And number two is you're having to burn some social capital of your own if you are really pushing for a version that's not the least risk version of this. And I'll just give you an example. We've heard this adage, right? Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM way back in the day. And the concept behind that still kind of holds true today, which is that if I'm not really taking a perceived risk, right? If I'm going with the industry standard and something goes sideways, I can always push back on the fact that, like, hey, we're using the biggest, best firm to do this, right? The least risky. And so if something goes wrong, I have a real, a real decision to stand behind. But if I've actually picked a more risky firm, a firm that maybe isn't as established as another firm, then I've actually created a situation where I've added some risk into that. And now if something goes wrong, I am personally sort of spending some social capital inside the firm because of that. So we also ask what are the research sources that they utilize, and you can see utilizing the actual vendor is one of those. The industry sites is another one. Search engines is a big piece of this. Review sites is a big piece of this. So there's a lot of different places where people do go and research, and I'll share with you a little bit more detail on that as well. This is really brand new research, and you're going to hear me talking a lot about this over the course of the next year because I think this is really, really important. Google did this research, and it really jumped off the page when I read it. And what they found is that in general, B2B buyers, 81% have what they call a day one list. And that means that they are, for any position that they're trying to fill, any role that they're trying to partner with an outside firm for their company, they have some idea of some potential vendors that could be considered to do that service and to do that job. And what we really, so 81%, 4 out of 5 have somebody in mind that they're at least open to considering as they do this. And that was a big number, but really what jumped out of me was the second part of that, which is that 92%, so 9 out of 10 ultimately end up buying from that day one list if they have one. So really, we have come back to this kind of concept that we all had in our marketing classes growing up, coming through college, which was this, there was like awareness, and then there was, did you make the consideration set? And what this is basically saying is, look, if you're not on that consideration set in a B2B environment, you're probably not going to make, you're not going to make it up, right? You're not going to get found and added to that piece. So we did our own research on this and to see if it was any different for professional service buyers. And what we found was that about 2/3 have a day one list. But similar to what Google found, we found that actually 95%, if they did have a vendor that was on that day one list, they did have a firm that they thought they might partner with, 95% of the time, so almost all the time, they ended up going with somebody that was on that day one list. And so the way that breaks down again is, 35% have no day one list. And then, typically what we see is between 2 and 3 firms that are on that day one list as a part of it. So what we understand is that even if somebody has a day one list, they oftentimes will go and try to add to that day one list, and then they'll try to pretty quickly turn that into the final consideration set, and then spend their time really researching amongst those firms who they should be utilizing. And so once that day one list is established, what we ask is like, what is the first step that you take once you've established that? And what we see is that almost half seek out a referral, and the other half basically go online. And that is really the 2 different ways that they go. And the way to think about this is that there's 2 questions that they're trying to understand. Can I trust this firm? And are there other firms that are less risky for us to choose? And so when they're searching online, I'll show you some of the things that they're really kind of searching for. The number one thing is, are they considered experts in their field? The second thing is, do they have some specialization in our industry? And then the third piece of that is, ratings. So the review sites and or testimonials. I would say it wasn't part of our survey in here, but I would say that, case studies, any of those things in there as well. So I put those up there because I think that it's a really helpful way for us to think about this. And I'll show you another visual that kind of drives this home, right? So the top thing that they're looking for when they're searching online is, can I see online that they know their business? And then the industry piece of this is really kind of, how are they answering, okay, do they know our business? And then that third piece of it is, okay, so they have the capabilities. They have the domain expertise and are experts in what they provide, and they know something about our business and our industry. Now the third piece of it is, okay, do they actually execute and deliver the value that it looks like they could deliver? And that's where that testimonials come through. And so the way I think about it is, like most things, right? There's always a good pyramid that explains everything. And so the way that I think about this from the data is that base level of that pyramid, where honestly the service firms that we work with spend a lot of their marketing effort, a lot of their business development effort is around proving that they really are experts in what they provide. If you're an accounting firm, doing M&A, it's showing that you have M&A expertise. As a law firm, it's IP. If IP is the practice area that you're working on, you're really focusing a lot on, okay, show them that we know a lot around IP, that we're a thought leader around IP. And things like, the tenure of your professionals, training credentials, wide breadth of services, those types of things really drive this, right? And this is back to what I just showed you. This is the level where you're kind of showing them that you know your business. And that's what they're trying to find out. Now, the problem is that I would say most of the firms that we deal with and have visibility into, they don't actually make it to that next level. They don't spend enough time really showing the industry expertise, industry-specific marketing content, roundtables. Now, there's certainly examples of this, people that have a really strong dental practice or really strong, beverages practice, or something along those lines. But I would just encourage you to really think about what are you actually doing within each of your practice areas that's showing that not only are you expert in what you do, but you're also expert in the types of businesses that you do it for. And this is where they're trying to understand, do they know our business, right? They know their business, but do they know our business? And really, the more you can do with roundtables, community building, industry specific marketing and content, that's that second level. And then this top level that we spend very little time on, right? And I would just encourage you, like, go to 5 of your competitors' websites. They're all going to tell you how important client service is to them and how they put their clients and their employees first. And very few of them will actually provide any evidence of that. And so if you can't provide evidence of it, you can't really differentiate in that space. And so that's that top of that pyramid is them just trying to understand, do they actually deliver? So I know they could deliver, but do they deliver? And that's where we look at online reputation. This is testimonials. The more specific you can provide those testimonials, the better. The reputation of your professionals, the more you can bolster that, enhance that, the better there as well. First question in the Q&A tab. So thank you for engaging in that way. I'll take them as they come. And then if we have time at the end, I'll try to leave some time at the end as well. The first question coming in is, what are some examples of ways that you've seen people build credibility in a particular industry? Well, let me kind of step back on this. If you don't have a real industry practice today, what I would tell you is everybody has some industries where they have a couple of flagship clients that they can point to. And what I would say is look at those flagship clients and then define that universe in a way to where you can go in with a straight face and say, hey, we work with more firms like yours than anybody else in this area. So define the geographic region, define the space, however you need to be able to say those words, and then find the 10 other people that look like those handful of really flagship clients that you have, and take that to the market. But what you really want to show is that you can speak their language. And one of the times early on when we were in the staffing space, we got advice from someone and they said, look, you speak our language, but you speak it with a heavy accent. And you need to really invest so that you speak it with less of, so it more in a way that we can fully understand. And that made sense to me, right? That we needed to really show we needed to be of the industry, not a vendor to the industry. And so we really focus on that. I think that the roundtables are really, really impactful. If you can actually, put yourself at the focus of a roundtable of peers talking about their industry, learning from each other. It's a really great place. You're not really then required to bring all of the answers. You're just bringing people together that are like-minded, similar businesses that can learn from each other. There's a ton of value in doing that, and putting yourself at the middle part of that space. So that's one of the areas that I would just encourage you to look at. You could do it not that terribly expensively. And again, it's not about you and what you know. It's about bringing people together. You can sprinkle in some of the things that you know, some of the things that the firm knows, but that's not the point. The point is to put yourself at the center of some of those communities in a way that is really impactful. So I've been trying to figure out how to wrap my head around this, and one of my favorite podcasts is called Plain English with Derek Thompson, and it's a really interesting way. He shared a really interesting way where basically what he said is that what I've been saying is, look, the decline in trust is so critical and so clear. Organized religion, the media, business, the government, every major institution in our life. They've been measuring sort of how much we as a society in the United States trust those institutions. And across the board, they're at like 30-year lows as a part of this. We don't trust almost anything institutionally anymore. It's certainly not at the levels that we did 20, 30 years ago. And so I was talking about this decline in institutional trust. He made a really strong argument that I think I've come to believe, which is that it hasn't actually declined, it's shifted. And what that means is that as we've declined, we've become less trusting of large institutions and firms like yours, right? We don't trust yet as much on that. We've actually become far more trusting in individuals, right? And so you think about this, like we trust a lot that we're driving with somebody safe just because a whole bunch of other people rated them high on Lyft or Uber or something along those lines. We trust our Airbnb hosts not to be crazy murderers because other people stayed at their house and were treated well. We trust people to allow them into our house, to allow them into our car, based on nothing other than what other strangers said about that individual. And so in some ways, we're trusting way more than we ever would, right? If you would have told my parents 20, 25, 30 years ago, hey, that we're going to let somebody come and stay in this empty room in our house. They're going to pay us a little bit of money. We don't know them. We have no idea anything about them except for some other people that we don't know said that they're pretty great guests. Like that would seem crazy. And yet we do this all the time now with Airbnb as a part of this. Another good question coming in. Assuming we follow a rigorous plan to design and create the client journey, is there an appropriate timeline to go from awareness to advocate? I'm asking this just to make sure I do not overuse company resources or maybe waste too much time on this type of plan. It's a really good question as you're working on this. And so what I would say is that, as you look at people you're not working at yet, so prospects, not actual current clients, what I would want to be looking at is, okay, how do we make ourselves a part of some of these communities? You can't spread yourself too thin, right? So you may be willing to work with any, business in the Portland area where I am. You may be willing to do that, but your marketing efforts and your outreach efforts need to be more focused than that. And so find a couple places where you can really make yourself a center part of that community. Build that awareness, build that consideration, add value, right? Add value. Don't just go in wanting to talk about yourself. Add value to them before you ever get a penny from them as a client. And that'll be really helpful. As you go to those next phases and you're actually bringing people on and then reinforcing the value that you create, some of the things you're doing at that awareness stage are going to be really impactful for your current clients as well. So make sure that you're getting that on board as well. But you should be taking somebody, the awareness game is a game that you're building over months and years as a part of that. It is a part, but you will see it start to drive additional opportunities and really high value opportunities into your pipeline and into your business development plan there as a part of it. As you go, once you actually take a new client and you're taking them into onboarding and into that advocacy stage, that onboarding phase is really, really critical. But you really should be into year 2 where you now are starting to cement that loyalty. So that journey does take a while on the client side. It's a really great question. Let's dive a little bit deeper and into those onboarding issues. So here's the most common issues that came up in the study that we just did. Timelines not effectively being shared, technology creating some inefficiencies in the onboarding. Onboarding is work for your clients. And so the more that you can empathize with the work and the pain point, even if they're excited about working with you, there is some shifting costs, some pain points there. And really stay proactive as much as possible. So the biggest impact on satisfaction was if updates were not being shared throughout the onboarding. That had the biggest impact. The second biggest impact was that it was considered to be inefficient. So, whether it's the technology creating inefficiencies or just the steps there creating inefficiencies, it's something to really be aware of as you're taking people through that onboarding process. And this is one of the things that we'll hit on this just a little bit deeper as we go into some of the CX strategies in this next section. But one of the biggest things that we're seeing people really start to is, hey, we need to get feedback differently if somebody's a new client working with us. So we'll see people that will really try to trigger a survey not long after the first invoice has gone out, working with a client. And we ask a little bit different questions than we would if somebody was on year 3 or 4 or 5 with us. And then typically going in at kind of a 90-day touch point is a great place to go as well. So we usually take, ask them to kind of query off of that initial invoice, which most people have the ability to really track that pretty well in their CRM or in their time and billing software. And then we'll see them kind of hit that again, roughly, 90 days later, sometimes a little bit longer than that. So what are some of the trends that are really impacting CX in 2025 and beyond? This is our overall response rate of the professional service firms that we work with. And there's good news, bad news in here. The bad news is that the median response rate of all the firms we work with has continued to drop. It was kind of at a high point of around 28%, kind of held there. And then as we kind of came out of the recession, it dropped to around 24%. And then this year, so far, year to date, it's around 21% is the median response rate. So that's something that we're continuing to work on. It's a never-ending journey for us to try to get into as many inboxes as possible. But there's a couple other things that I want you to think about as well. We're still well above the B2B average is 12.5%. So we're still almost double that B2B average. We're very proud of that. Yet we know that our work is never going to be done on getting to the response side of things. So we've been doing more now with texting along with emailing. That's actually, on the staffing side, we've been doing that with candidates for a long time, but we're starting to see some people wanting to do that on the client side as well. And then, this is kind of our best, best advice for impacting, response rate. But the biggest thing actually is that gray box, which is that client responses are everyone's responsibility, not just marketing's. Too often what I see is that people are, pushing a lot of pressure on whoever's running the program to get the response rate up. Well, we got to get the higher response rate. Well, we didn't get enough responses, so the program wasn't working the way that we wanted it to. Well, the responses are very much an indicator of how engaged your client group is, and the ability to get your firm to push for that feedback tells me how much they actually value getting that feedback from their clients. And if you're not having a significant impact on both of those, then there's still work to be done internally, not just externally, right? All these things that we have laid out here are things that will help increase that response rate. But the thing that really matters a lot is that we view this as a firm-wide initiative. We want to get that feedback. It's a perfect excuse to reach out to clients who are always complaining that we don't reach out enough unless we're actively engaged in a project with them. We don't reach out enough. And so here's an opportunity for us to reach out and just build some goodwill and reinforce the loyalty and the importance of this. And it's going to help your response rates as well. One of the things that is really interesting to us, and we're investing a lot in at ClearlyRated, is looking at different signals and opportunities to listen and taking a more holistic view to client health than has happened in the past. And so in the past, what we typically see with firms is that if they're working with us, they're doing an online survey, and they're doing executive interviews. But they're not really doing a great job of bringing any, feedback that's coming specifically from their key contacts. They're not doing that much on the sentiment analysis. We've got actually a new AI-driven sentiment analysis tool that's literally coming online later this week. I'm really, really excited about to allow for that direct feedback. But I think the future and some of the places where we see the product going is, both indirect feedback. So this would be sort of monitoring what people are saying about you online through reviews, maybe things that are coming up. It's not a review, but it's posting on social media, asking anything along those lines. Like if your client is posting on social media, hey, does anybody in, my group have an accounting firm that they really love working with? Well, that should be a massive red flag, right? If they're looking for an accounting firm and you are their accounting firm, that's something that we want to know about, right? So we want to bring that intelligence in there as well. And then this area of inferred feedback, which I think is really fascinating as well. And this is understanding on the CRM. How long has it been since somebody's been reached out to? When was the last time that they engaged with any of your marketing that you've sent? When was the last time that they responded to an email from your professionals? That type of data, what's their spend patterns been over time? What's, what are they doing online? Are they looking for other firms as a part of this? All of this is really important for us to be able to bring to bear as well. And we've never had more data than we have today. It'll be more tomorrow than we have today. It'll be more next year and 5 years and 10 years from now. And so the ability to really make sense of all of that data and turn it from static into a signal is going to be really, really impactful. And something that you should be looking at how you invest in as well. Some of you have seen us kind of share this book below, but as we see the CX space mature, we also are seeing people ask more and expect more from their programs. If you are simply asking for feedback and then sharing those results back out to your audience, it's just really not enough, right? You should expect more from your program. Your program should not just measure the client experience. It should actually impact it, and it should make that process of following up easier for you. That's one of the lenses that we're really trying to put everything through right now is how are we actually taking work off of the plates of our customers, not just telling them what they need to do next. Also, delivering on this, you're sitting on a gold mine of data. And if you're just mining it to see what's going wrong or who's likely to leave, you're missing all of this great positivity that you can really deliver and drive into your organization. How you appreciate internal employees. I'll talk a little bit more about that piece in a minute on some of the mistakes that we see. How are you utilizing this in your go-to-market strategy? Are you getting credit for the great work that you're doing in some of the segments that you're already working in, some of the verticals that you're strong in? Those things really, really matter. I've shared this, but you just have to say it. This is kind of tied a little bit with the role of Gen Y and younger in the marketplace. So Gen Y and younger is going to represent 2/3 of the workforce by 2029, right around the corner. And when you look at it through that lens and you look at specifically what that generation, those two generations really want, they want to self-serve. They want to be on the freeway of self-service where they're doing these tasks, what we call sort of, the low risk, the low attention tasks. They have to be done, but they're not strategic in nature. They want to be able to choose when they do that, how they do that, where they do that. But they want a lot of exit ramps. And when they take those exit ramps, they want to have the expertise. They want to have help and responses quickly as they do that, which brings me to the next piece of this, which is that we're just not good at waiting around. You can see here, this is the expected response time on email or voicemails. 1/3 of people expect it within 4 hours. The majority, 61%, actually say that they expect it at least within the same day. And so again, if you're thinking about this from your standpoint, if I'm on a freeway and I exit to get information, right, to recharge my journey. And it takes me 2 days before I can get back on the freeway again. That's a problem, right? That's a major friction point in my journey. And that's something that we have to think about as we architect these journeys and these experiences. How are you removing that friction? And then how are you putting the expertise in the key points that they need on their journey so that they can quickly get back to that journey in an effective and efficient way? We've talked about shortening the distance from input to insight. This is really what these large language models are doing, and you can see how much better they're getting, so much quicker as part of this. And most of the people on the call, I'm sure, are doing some kind of co-pilot or have played around a little bit with utilizing this to actually do the work in your job, which I really recommend. When you look at this from a CX standpoint, it's going to allow us to really kind of dive deeper in the analytics and get to insights much quicker. But it's also the expectation for our clients is it should be shortening timelines, should be lowering costs in some ways, should be making firms more productive, and it's certainly raising their expectations. You can see that that's the key ways that they expect AI to impact how they work with you. In addition to that, what I would say is, here's a look at kind of what we're releasing this week, right? This ability to really know what to do next and to be predictive in those analytics based on the sentiment of what people are giving you feedback on is going to be a really powerful thing. And so we're overlaying this on the survey data today. But as we get deeper, I suspect that we'll be laying this over some of that inferred and indirect listening as well in the future. And kind of a bonus here, yes, we are getting deeper and deeper into the technology. For a professional service firm, that's both a threat and an opportunity. But what I would say is, don't allow these technologies to fully dehumanize this interaction. There is still a need, I believe, in 2025 and beyond for a true trusted advisor role. And that trusted advisor now looks even more like a superhero because they have the power of these large models behind them. And they have the ability to speed up that journey for a client, but there's still that role for the superhero to come in and provide that context, to provide that connection, and to provide that partnership in navigating this journey. So I want to go through the next about 10 minutes with 10 mistakes that we're seeing firms make all too often with their CX programs. And then, that'll put us at about 45 minutes. And so I'll take any questions there at the end. So if you have questions, go ahead and start typing them into the Q&A panel. And that way I'll make sure to leave enough time at the end on this as well. We see a lot of people putting a lot of focus on the measurement side of it and the analysis and the write-up of the reports, and much less on the improvement. And this is my favorite analogy on this, right? Measuring your height doesn't make you grow taller. I was going to put in sort of a pithy kind of analogy around the use of a Fitbit or a watch along those lines. And I actually even went a little bit into the weeds on this and found that, there's been a macro study of about 36 studies that found that actually wearing a Fitbit or a fitness watch of some sort does not have a lasting impact on sort of health outcomes, which is to say that once that novelty wears off, we just have more information and we don't change our behavior. And I see too many CX programs doing the same thing. So make sure, however much effort and time you're putting into the measurement, if you're not also making time to really leverage that information, to really get it to the right people, you're not going to actually impact it. And whatever your service experience, it's just going to kind of stay at that level. It's not the survey program, the feedback program is not going to impact it. It's just going to measure it. And that's, as we pointed out earlier, not going to be sustainable, and certainly not going to be considered kind of world-class. Lacking a growth mindset. I went through a training here just recently. I certainly see it with my kids, right, of of trying to help them understand that we should all be open and wanting to get feedback, constructive criticism, and trying to get better and trying to get more focused on this. And so this see no evil, hear no evil. I'm not going to ask the question because I don't want to have the answer. I don't have to take action on that answer. It's just really not an opportunity to move to the next phase of growth for your firm or for your professionals. And so really trying to reinforce with them, look, we do this because we all want to get better. We all want to continue to get better and drive more value, add more value. And so let's understand what we are doing well and the areas that we can improve so that we can take that to the next level. Data hygiene. I almost guarantee that if I could see your faces, I would see a bunch of people sort of chuckle to themselves, eye roll. This is the most consistent problem that we see. It's the biggest limitation to really a true client health initiative, which is that you don't actually trust that you have even the right clients in your database, much less that there is enough adherence to it that you're adding that data into this database. And so if you are not focusing on that data hygiene and not getting your firm to commit to leveraging your CRM in a strategic way, you're going to always be limited on what you can do out of these CX programs because you're going to just have a very small view into the window of that relationship. So not just for your survey program, but for all of your customer marketing, for all of your opportunity advancement, all of that is going to rely on the quality of your data. And so if you're not focusing on this today, I just highly encourage you to do some of that hard work early on. Once you start to build that muscle memory, what you'll find is that you'll get way more out of the data, which then is easier for people to spend the time focusing on that. If you're spending more time administering the survey, trying to figure out what the questions are, what the analysis is, what it means, how do I write it up, how do I get it to an executive audience, you're missing really the value proposition, which is getting this to the field in a way that they can take action on it. So that's why, like, for those of you that are customers on this, that's why you partner with us, is that we can take a lot of that heavy lifting off of your plate so that you can focus on the thing that you can only do, which is really taking this into your organization and really driving change internally there as well. Boy, it is human dynamics for us to focus on the negative, and I see that so through and through. When we get feedback, and you get 50 responses, if there's 2 negative ones, those 2 negative ones will take 90% of your time, 90% of your emotion. That is what you're going to share. We have to fix this. What went wrong? How do we do this? And we go into that mode. And it's part of why we do this program, right? We want to identify at-risk folks, and we want to be able to go in and hopefully recover from them in a way that we live to fight another day, and we can take them further. But I cannot tell you how often it is that we have just raving fans, so many clients that are thrilled with you all, and yet it's not really ever getting circulated internally, externally as well. And the reality is that these are your best cheerleaders. You can't be, you could tell one of your professionals that they're doing a great job. It will not be as impactful as an important client raving about them. You can tell a prospect how great you are. It'll not be as impactful as if they see another client of yours say how great you are, right? We have to do a better job of bringing this and celebrating these wins externally. And when we do have these issues, we have to close the loop quickly. And too often we're seeing people take way too long on this, and ultimately the caliber of the service recovery is critical. The timing of that service recovery is as important as a part of this, right? So we do not want to wait on these. We want to have a triage plan in place. We want to know that there are going to be issues, and those issues are little gems of gold that are going to keep us moving in the right direction and hopefully allow us to save that client as well. I've been using this analogy of really, we're kind of going from a report card to a roadmap. And I actually think I'm going to update it to a GPS, right? Because a roadmap is static and you don't really know, you have to be understanding where you're at on that. And a GPS is very different, right? It's constantly taking in new information and recalibrating. And so when you're looking at how you architect your CX program, you should be kind of having that same mindset, right? How do we get more information into our GPS so that we're building the correct roadmap for that client journey and having it be the most efficient, effective, and it really engaging client journey as a part of this. And so that's the way I would like you to be thinking about this. If you're just measuring a single point in time, you're not going to drive that organizational change. It's going to come up and it's going to be, okay, this is great. And you might, maybe do a new training next year based on something, but you're not going to get the specificity that you get by measuring on a regular basis at a regular cadence and getting that to your professionals. That is true world-class, best-in-class CX mindset, and that's where I think you need to be going. Well, I spent so much time thinking that it's our CX strategy. What are we doing? What do we need to do differently in onboarding? How do we plan that out? What do we need to do doing differently if we acquire another firm? Let's plan that out. And yet we don't focus nearly as much on that execution. And so, it's just an example, right? So let's say at the firm, we see this happen all the time, right? NPS of 82, that's great. You can see the green is areas where she's better than her firm in those key areas. And yet here's this guy across the country, same firm, same training, same resources, similar client base, and they have an NPS well below the industry average, and some real issues around service quality and proactiveness as a part of it. So you can't really tell me if I see something like this in your data, I'm going to jump to the idea that yes, there may be some broken links in your strategy and your process, but the real broken links are in that execution. And the way that we fix those broken links is through creating visibility, actionability, and then eventually accountability as a part of this. So we want to be able to move our professionals through those different phases to where they have access to the information, then that they very clearly understand how to take action on that information. And then finally, there's a level of accountability where they're expected to utilize that information to increase the satisfaction of the clients that they work with. Number 9, boy, we have this massive black box. And I spent a lot of time, I've got a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. I spent a lot of time relearning how to do math because they do it different now. Anybody who has kids in sort of late elementary or middle school area knows this as well. But part of what they ask the kids to do now is to do it and show their work a couple different ways. And this is actually a pretty good piece of advice for us as well. Too often, I'll just use the most simple example possible. If you're an accounting firm, your tax practice, your clients generally see this input of a bunch of information that they give to their tax planner, and then boom, magically, a couple months later, there's a tax filing, and that tax filing has, I either owe some money or maybe I get overpaid and I get some money back. And I have no idea what you actually did on my behalf in the interim as a part of it, because that's all a big black box. You could have explored all sorts of deductions. You could have saved me thousands of dollars, but I'm not going to know that. I'm just going to assume that I got exactly what the base level was, unless you tell me, unless you show me as a part of this. In the staffing and recruiting space, we see this all the time. There's a job order that goes out, a rec that needs to be filled. And they go through all of this work on the backside, and then they say, hey, here's 2 people that you should consider for this job. Well, I don't know that you actually went through 100 qualified people and that you spoke with a dozen, and that these were the 2 that you wanted and that really stood out to you. I don't know what you've gone through. You've got to tell me that, because if you don't tell me that, and I don't think that those people are the right fit, or you don't tell me that and there's an issue with the return, the tax return, you don't tell me that and there's something that within my matter surprised me along the way, I'm going to assume the worst. So you have to get credit so that it's not just solely on the outcome, that you're being judged for all of the hard work that you're doing behind the scenes. Get credit for that as you go. And then, we just hear all the time people talking about, well, we need, to grow our client headcount. And the reality is that in the most recent study that we did, we only found that about 1 in 5 clients spends their entire budget within a space with a single firm. So, only 1 in 5 clients are spending their entire accounting budget with one accounting firm. Same with staffing, same with legal across those boards, same with insurance, all the other industries that we cover. And so that means that you have a tremendous amount of opportunity, right? About 11% said that they just spend a little bit, and or 16% said that they spend, a little bit, which is what we said, kind of 10% or less. 39% said that they spend some with their primary firm, so 11 to 50%. The majority, 27% say they spend the majority, which is between 51 and 99% of their spend. But again, only 18% say they spend the entire amount there. So earn the business, identify those opportunities. This is a great role for the CX program. This is kind of an evolution that we've seen and that we've really helped to drive over the last couple of years. But your CX program should be identifying opportunities for growth as well as a part of that. So at this point, we're at about 50 minutes in. So I kind of lied. I thought we'd be here at 45. We're here at 50. I do have a couple questions, but I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of everybody's time here as well. So if you need to drop, please feel free to drop. The first question that I'll take is related to the trends. What do you see in terms of people utilizing text more? Is that something we should be paying attention to on the client side? We are seeing people go more omni-channel, and we are seeing more texting between professionals and clients than we have in the past. People still widely prefer email, with phone being second, but text and or chat is rising up a little bit in comparison with that. What's the best way to get started if we're not currently running a survey feedback program? Yeah, this is one of the places where I'll actually go back and I'll tell you, okay, what's the appetite internally? How committed to this is the leadership team? If this is an initiative that you're driving, but there's not a ton of support for it yet, then I think what you want to do is come in and say, hey, we want to do a relationship survey a couple times a year. And we want to start with something along those lines, knowing that we're going to eventually try to grow this to getting feedback that is on a more regular cadence. But that's kind of where you might want to start that piece of it. Amongst the mistakes that you listen, what's the easiest fix? That's a really good question. I think the easiest fix is to stop holding this information so close at the executive level. Getting this information, like you're all professionals, in professional service firms, everybody has, for the most part, that's client facing has a college degree. Many of them have a master's degree of some sort or another. Like these folks can all understand what the feedback they're getting from clients are. So make that feedback available to them. If they can't understand it, then that's on you for having too much in that feedback program. There's too many barriers on that. So get that feedback and that recognition out at the field level, and you can do a lot wrong and still have a really successful program that has a real positive impact. So that would be my advice along those lines. It looks like all of the questions that we have currently. Again, we will be sharing out both these slides as well as a recording of this. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Please do reach out if there's anything that me or my team can do to help you as you're on your journey to putting client experience at the center of your growth strategy. I'm really happy to help. We love geeking out about this stuff. So with that, have a wonderful day and reach out if we can be helpful.